WNBC. Freedom!
I'll crush you like a
Are you
watermelon.
guys Howard Stern fans? Because I love that.
Yeah, that's what
we're
it's
very
called,
much
yeah.
Howard Stern. I have a Howard Stern reference later that I'm gonna bust out on you guys, but we'll
Dude,
get to
you
that.
sound like him.
Dude, appreciate it.
He comes up in our conversations at least once per episode. So.
Yeah, he's like Superman, shows up in Seinfeld every episode
Right.
somehow. There's some kind of Howard Stern reference in our shit.
You sound like William Wallace. I mean, I wouldn't want to be standing across from you, man. I think like you would like cut me down with a sword.
I mean, I look more like Yamish if I stand up, but yeah, I'll take that as well. Yamish is the fucking man.
That's right. I take Yamish.
Let me do a quick intro. The Parlapanides brothers. Did I pronounce that properly?
Perfect.
Yes.
Damn.
Two brothers, storytellers in arms that we're fucking jealous of because of their Greek heritage, that they get to just crush Greek mythology stuff left and right, which we grew up. That was our bread and butter. Clash of the Titans, seminal shit. I'm sure we'll get into that. But you guys are known for Immortals and now the creators of Blood of Zeus. And there's Death Note adaptations, stuff like that as well. But you're definitely the go-to Greek mythology guys, right?
Listen, we've been very blessed that something we love and that's always been near and dear to us, that we've been able to kind of play in that sandbox. And we always say, like, you know, with Immortals and especially with Blood of Zeus, it's not our story, you know, it's Greece's story. And it's just an amazing body of storytelling that we just love. And, you know, we just feel very lucky that, you know, kind of like, to be honest, it's so funny you mentioned Clash of the Titans. I think I might have told you guys.
Tell them the story, bro. Tell them the story. I was just going to tell you, if you weren't going to bring it up, I'm like, Charlie had the perfect story for this. And guys, this can go as long as you want, but you got to tell them the story, bro.
Well, you know, the first script we ever sold was a heist script. And we sold it to Universal. And we were with Mike Asola, who you knew at William Morris.
Yep.
And
he repped us for a minute. Yep.
Yeah, and he sent us the back when there was open writing assignments, he sent us the grid, and we saw Clash of the Titans remake at Warner Brothers, and that was like one of our favorite films ever growing up. And we loved all the Harryhausen stuff.
Yes.
You know, all the it's just amazing. Like,
cheers to Harryhausen. Cheers to Harry Hamlin. Clash of Burgess Meredith. Shout out to everybody.
Oh my God, dude, that movie is so good, and I rewatched that recently, and it still holds up. I don't care what anyone says. That movie is amazing.
Fuck yeah.
There might be no movie I'm looking forward to showing my 7-year-old more than Clash of the Titans. He already knows Greek mythology. We read that shit at bedtime, and
he'll eat that up.
Do you guys read Percy? Which ones do you read to him?
Greek myths.
Oh, that's great.
The real shit. Yeah.
Wow.
Anyway, go on. Sorry, I'm interrupting.
No. So we saw that they were remaking, you know, Clash of the Titans at Warner Brothers, and we asked Mike, like, hey, could you put us up for this? And basically what he came back and said is that, listen, they won't even, you know, take a meeting with you guys because the sample you guys have is a heist film. You know, there's no reason there's no reason for you to be considered for this. And we were like, that's bullshit. We love that movie. We're Greek. We lived in Greece. We grew up on these stories. And like, that's basically why we wrote Immortals, was just to have a world building sample so that we could, you know, go up for those kind of jobs. And then we ended up getting in this competition because there was a brief moment where Warner's was going to buy Immortals, but they kind of slow played it, and the producers were convinced we were going to sell it there because they had done 300 there, but they were basically just waiting because they were out to Louis Leterrier for Clash, and if he would have passed, they were going to buy Immortals and have that be their Greek mythology film. But literally, and like, that was insane. That's a whole other story and maybe too inside baseball. But the only reason we wrote Immortals is because we wanted to be involved with the remake of Clash of the Titans because we loved the original so much. And then because then we had that sample, then we could pitch stuff like that and continue to kind of pursue those things. So it was just
This was probably like what, 2009, 2010?
2007, right before the strike.
Right before the strike. All right, because I was going to say nowadays they'd be like, get some Greek guys to write.
All right.
Like,
you just have to do all that legwork, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. They wrote a high script. Who gives a shit? They're Greek.
That's true. But here's the other part of that story was, and a little part that got missed, was that we were also up for a Sly Stallone open writing assignment. And we told our agent, hey, like, you know, we love Sly, and we'll get into it because it also kind of plays into one of our favorite movies. And there's a great Sly story, as I'd mentioned, you guys.
Yeah.
But it was a movie where it was going to be in the future. And like, We couldn't kind of wrap our heads around it. And we said, okay, we could either do this or we could write this mythology on spec. And they're like, that's the worst idea ever. There's like 3 films out there already in Greek mythology. There's God of War at Universal. There's Clash of the Titans. And there was something else. I forget what it was.
Yeah, and we'll rewrite those motherfuckers if nothing else.
And then we're like, because we didn't know any better, and I don't know, we're stubborn. We're like, yeah, but we believe in this story. We're passionate about it. And we ended up writing that instead of taking on this other job. We did that for the strike. Yeah, paying job.
All right, what's this Sly Stallone story?
The Sly Stallone story is great. Go ahead.
It just speaks to storytelling. No, you tell the story, but it's just so important. Like, people don't understand. Like, there are certain fundamental story elements that some people get and some people don't.
Sly
and
gets them.
Sly, I don't care what anyone says. He's one of the all-time greats. Like,
Absolutely.
He does not get the credit he deserves. So, Vlas, tell the story because you're the one that brought it up.
Well, yeah, we both brought it up. Listen, we both love Rocky. If you watch Rocky, that film works.
Right.
That film still holds up, and part of the barometer that we use with regards to a film, or at least I would say, I think this applies for Charlie too. Is like, does it move me emotionally? At the end of the day, is it tugging me emotionally in some way? Is it making me laugh? Is it making me cry? Is it suspenseful? Whatever it may be. And so when we met Sly, he goes, writers, like, oh, writing's hard. And
that's like having homework every night.
Right.
You can feel it. And that's a guy that's done everything. He's acted, he's directed, but like it really felt like writing was the hardest part of all of it. But anyway, we told him that we love Rocky. We told him that our favorite scene in Rocky is the scene, it's like 3/4 towards the end, maybe even the 7/8 towards the end. It's like the end there where he's lying in bed with Adrian and he basically tells her, who am I kidding? I can't beat this guy, but if I can go those 10 rounds, then I'll know I'm not another bum from the neighborhood. I said, I love that. We love that.
Like victories, for sure.
It sets up the end line that he can win by losing.
It's a loss, but it's still a victory. Yeah.
Exactly. And it's the heart of the film. Like, there it is. That guy's bearing his soul. And he told us that the producer said, because they had been shooting in this location for a long time. They didn't have it. They ran.
They only had his apartment for 2 days, and they had to film all the scenes that happened in his apartment in those 2 days. And basically, that was the last scene they were set to film, and they had already gone into overtime. And so, tell them what happened.
Yeah, they said there's no time for it, Sly. We're just going to cut from the scene before, and we're going to go right to the fighting. And he's like, what? He's like, no effing way. He's like, I will not do the fighting unless we do this scene.
Yeah.
And then the sound guy, because Sly was knowing that, he's like, no, F that, let's go home. We're all fucking tired. So he's fighting with the sound guy, like, about whether they should go home or not. Anyway, the producers allow him to shoot that scene. He does it.
They say one take. You have one take. You have one take to do this.
Yeah. He actually told us that he went down to the 7-Eleven, got a Colt 45, pounded it, came back up.
Nice.
Cheers.
Anyway, the next day, he said the producer came up to him and hugged him and said, that's the best scene in the movie.
Yes.
And right. So like, it was just like, so ever since then, he really liked us. He goes, because we picked his favorite scene in Rocky. But it also too, as Charlie said, it really speaks to storytelling and what matters and what what moments are important.
Right.
And
there's another tiny little flair out of all the Rocky movies. One of my favorite little details is in Rocky Balboa. It's when Adrian's dead, and just the fact that he keeps a chair in the tree next to her grave. That's so sweet. It says so much. Like,
isn't that true?
You get so much information.
That's a great example.
It is.
And I don't know if that's in the script or if that's something Sly just came up with on the fly or something, but either way, it's brilliant, man.
Yeah, he understands.
That's what it's all about. That whole series is about them and that journey they went on as the wife of this guy who's trying to be a star and a heavyweight champion,
And his whole tactic is getting his ass beat, till the other guy wears out. I mean,
bro, tell him what
that's got to be hard to be the wife.
When he pitches, this is more season 2, season 3.
This is now TV. You guys will appreciate this. You guys have developed TV, but like now, like when you sell a TV show, they're like what's season 2 and season 3, and like it's insane. Like you know how much work goes into just figuring out a pilot and having like a sense of where the first season goes. And, we've lamented that before. And there's a mutual friend of ours, and we'll tell you who it is off camera because I don't want to like throw him under the bus. But we were complaining about that. And he goes, oh, it's easy. He goes, when they ask you what happens in future seasons, you just use a movie from the Rocky series. So either you picture that like, okay, listen, the first season he did the impossible, and in the second season he's doubting himself and he's not sure if he really is who everyone is saying he is, and that's Rocky 2. Or, oh, we thought this guy was bad? We'll wait till this other guy shows up.
The maniac.
Rocky 3, you know? Or
and his mentor dies. And
he goes,
in the fourth, it's the Russians.
Rocky, and they think you figured it all out.
His brother-in-law gets shit-faced and pisses himself in the corner of the bar. Like, it's got every beat.
Paulie. You know?
Paulie's the best. Dude. Burt Young. Long live Burt Young.
His big Sopranos, if you've seen that, where he had to go do his last hit. That was amazing.
Well, speaking of Sopranos, you guys are Jersey boys, right?
We love the Sopranos. That's like our favorite show. That I would say Mad Men, Game of Thrones, those are like 3 favorite shows.
Yeah. Sopranos, top Gandolfini. Oh my goodness.
He was so good. He was so good.
Well, I mean, we're supposed to be here to talk about Braveheart as an icebreaker, but it doesn't matter. There's no rules to this shit. We broke the ice with you guys easy anyway. But it does speak to casting, like Gandolfini. Like if you put anyone else in that role, and we talk about the Marvel universe a lot, half of their genius is in the casting, man. Like Hemsworth is Thor, Robert Downey Jr. Without that, it could have been a rocky start, you know?
Eli Kazan, he always said 90% of directing is casting, and it's the truth. And you know the thing that's crazy, like, you know, we love The Sopranos. We used to watch it every day at lunch at work. We went through the seasons a couple times. Like while we would go pick up lunch and just sit and watch an episode of The Sopranos, like, you know, in the middle
of the day. Ever, man. I mean,
it just hits that sweet spot, man.
It does.
So good.
It's a lot of sweet spots.
Oh, absolutely.
It's just like, it's the best show ever, period. End of story for us. But what was always like kind of fascinating is that, like, you know, we were watching this like documentary on the making of The Sopranos. And, you know, Gandolfini, he didn't have a lot of confidence in himself. He'd always kind of played bit parts. And David Chase would always tell him, like, listen, you don't understand. Like, what you're giving me is gold. Like, this is
heavy,
gold.
dude. Yeah.
And he goes, you don't realize how good you are. And he couldn't, like, he's like, what is this guy telling me?
Yeah, he just had that self-doubt. I think that was a chronic thing with him. And, you know, it's like, you had bit parts, but you stole every fucking movie you were in. You stole it out from
romance.
Yes.
Yeah. And he's so good. But part of it, too, is that these actors, they get so beat down. Like, as writers, we deal with rejection all the time. The actors, they deal with that tenfold. And sometimes, like, there's a guy in our show who I think is super talented. And he just, if he got the right show, he could do. I told him, I said, you have a Gandolfini in you. You're a guy that everyone sees in movies. You're like, oh, that guy's always pretty good. But if you give him the right part, but they need that, you know, kind of player meet part kind of magic to come together. You know, at least we have like the ability to kind of write whatever we want to write. We don't need anyone's else permission. We don't need anyone else to kind of, you know, hand us the reins. But he's a guy that's just like uber talented. And because maybe he was a little heavy and, you know, he didn't look like a leading man, he always played bit parts.
That's the beauty, though. Like Chris and I, we're trying to, I mean, it'll never happen, but a couple things we want to do with this is the advent of the creative middle class. Like, can we make 50 grand a year doing this, telling stories, maybe even to a limited dedicated audience versus rags or riches with the studio system shit. But secondly, can we bring on a revolution of the ugly and the mediocre as leading characters? You know what I mean? Like, that's what makes a Walter White so great. That's what makes a Tony Soprano so great, is that they look like real people like us. And it's so much more relatable. But because there's nothing I hate worse than those promo shots of those shows where it's everybody, even if they're doctors, they have like the wind machine and they're all standing there like X-Men and shit. It's ridiculous. It's like, bring on, like, look at Bubble. Steven Soderbergh went to a town and cast the KFC manager as his lead. That's the shit I'm talking about.
That's great.
Anyway, that's my
screed.
In
TV, you'll see a little, you see more and more of that. I still think in features, if it's like, you know, it's still harder at the legacy studios. You know what I mean? Like, you know, it's crazy what they still think about. Like, you know, I was going to tell them that Harrison Ford story, but that's not ours to share. You know, but like they were like, there was an argument over his facial hair for Blade Runner, and it's just like, it's like crazy. It's like, you know, it's insane how some of that old school thinking still exists.
One thing I want to say though about Gandolfini too, man, and I know it's a cliche, but hard work pays off. So I studied with William Esper. He's an acting teacher in New York. He studied under Sandy Meisner, and so Gandolfini studied with him. He took his craft very seriously, and Bill would always tell us just how hard that guy worked. And everything you read about him too, like on set, he would always go to Chase, I can do it better, or I can do this. And he would really, really imbue the part. And
if he was supposed to be really angry or ornery in a scene, he'd stay up all night so that he'd be in an agitated state, and like he would go to those lengths.
Yeah,
I remember seeing a making of Sopranos, and there was a scene he was doing in a kitchen yelling at someone. I forget who it was, but after the cut, he just slammed the cabinet door like he was still in the mode, like just.
Shout out to Gail Hansen.
Unleash that energy. Yeah, right.
We had a lot of Meisner talk on here in our Dead Poet Society reunion special.
Oh, Gail's a good guy.
Dude, Gail's a
great guy. And that's
Gail used to be at Relativity. That's where we first met him, and that's who made Immortals, right? What was that whole experience like? This is inside baseball shit, but the Kavanaugh of it all and shit, like Tarsem Singh. I mean, you guys want to talk about Immortals at all? Because
sure, we talk about whatever. I love the Mickey Rourke story. Mickey Rourke was great, man. He was that guy. You know what's interesting, guys? Like when we were on set, and you know, when the camera was like, say on someone else, it was what it was. When Mickey Rourke got on set and the camera landed on him, he just had that thing. I can't,
Rourke, dude.
But I can't articulate it. It's just
it factor.
When you see it, you just wanted to follow that guy, and he made it look effortless. And he has that. You know, he's one of the best actors. You know, he is one of our favorite, and he's just always in the moment and truthful.
Dude, he's amazing. He's actually two of the best actors. Like you got young Mickey Rourke and then this new incarnation, and they're both badass. You know what I'm saying? But they're not the same person. He'd probably tell you that. He probably said there's 17 of them.
He was great. And that experience, listen, you know, there are parts of Immortals that we're very proud of. And overall, we still like, you know, that whenever I think of the movie, I smile. Part of it is that, like, it was just a crazy, like, the initial spec draft that we sold was like $150 million is what the line producer came back with. And basically what Relativity said is that if you can get it to 75 million, we'll make it. And so we just kind of like, you know, had a conversation.
Their finance fee. That's not really 75.
Well, that's the other thing. I can hear Johnny's voice, bro. Johnny Nunari, because that 75 million was actually really 60 million because they charge a 22% self-financing fee. So Johnny would be in the meeting. He's like, what's the number we have to make the movie? What is the number we actually have? So we really made that for 60 million, but it was 75 with their, you know, finance fee, which is in the budget. But basically, we kind of sat down with Tarsem when we said, like, is there a version that, you know, where we could get from what we had to this? And we just kind of had to, like, chop that script, you know, in half and pull out tons of stuff. And then there were things that, you know, concessions we had to make. And then there were two other writers that came in and rewrote us. And one, you know, I think took the story in a left-hand turn that, you know, kind of caused problems later that the third writer was able to kind of address. But there were still fundamental issues that dude introduced that I think hurt the film. And even when what was always cool was that Tarsem kept us involved, and he would show us the drafts, and we would, you know, give him feedback. And he's a class act, like one of the best people you will ever meet in town.
He's awesome.
He's a great guy. And what was funny is that we remember right during pre-production, we flew up to Montreal, and we told Tarsem, like, listen, like, we read the latest script, and like, these are a few of the issues that, you know, I think, you know, we could do better. And he's like, oh my God, Henry's been saying the same thing, but the studio they're comfortable with where the script is. They want it locked. They don't want any more changes. They just want me to shoot this. And so, you know, listen, again, it's something where there are things that, you know, there are times when I watch them, like, I really like this part, and I remember this, and this was fun. Now, it wasn't what we had when we first wrote it and sold it, but like, that's this business. Like,
you got to write a novel if you want that, and even then you'll be lucky if you end up with a publisher, but which is what we're kind of doing a lot these days.
You know what it was, guys? It was more fantastical. It was more Lord of the Rings in the world of Greek mythology, but that stuff was too expensive.
Right.
And then specifically, there was more of a little bit of a character arc in terms of he starts off angry, but then he lets go of his anger, and in doing so, he can overcome the adversity. He kind of stayed mad the whole way through.
Right.
So one of the things we did, even when it came to Blood of Zeus, we really wanted to kind of show that arc.
That was kind of our second bite at the apple with all of this.
That's cool to get that opportunity. Getting in the movie business. Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, as writer brothers, I'd be curious to know how you guys work together, like what your process is like. Because Jay and I went through periods where we'd both be looking at the script up on the wall on a projector, and arguing over every comma and
Those
word
were the
choice.
early days. And they were
That
like,
was in
what
our
are
early
we
days.
doing?
And,
Bro,
and
tell
now
them
we just
about
now we
Beanie
just
Off.
trust each other to write passages and such. You know, we go.
I want to hear how you guys work, but tell them about Beanie Off and Weiss.
I
Remember
thought you
that?
said tell them about beating off at first. I was like, what? That's your process? Us too.
That helps,
This is
right?
amazing.
Yeah, fuck all this writing shit. Let's hear it.
It's a circle jerk at the end of the day, right? Writing. Come on. Anyway,
Yeah,
go on.
it's funny, you know, Beanie Off and Weiss, they said when they first started writing together that they would fight and argue over punctuation. They were
Yep,
like,
that's where we were.
it took them like a day to just get through a paragraph. And then basically what they realized is that they couldn't work that way. And basically what they would
Couldn't
do
be
is
in
they
the
would
room
just,
together. Yeah.
yeah, they would talk about the story and then they would split it in half. And one would take the first half, the other would take the back half, and then they would trade and revise each other.
Yeah.
And to be honest, we've always I always say, thank God we grew up in a very tight, Greek family. Our parents had a bunch of kind of, small businesses, and we all grew up working together. So we've always, been able to work together easily. There, like I remember, bro, our first script we ever sold, Live Bet, like we both sat at the computer and we wrote the first 30 pages together. We were just talking it out, and one person would be typing, the other and we'd switch off, and I still think sometimes that there's value when we're both just, sharing a computer and just talking through a scene. But to be honest, now too, we're more seasoned and we're better at it. Is that we'll just talk through the story and like, okay, you take this scene, I take this scene, and then we, email them back and forth, and then we revise each other and share and we discuss, and
we'll even work
lay
on
down track.
multiple projects, and each one of us is a point man on our project. It's basically like we'll talk shit over, but then it's like do what you want and then check it out. And if you see something you really want to change, then change it. You know what I mean? It's almost very
it's evolved too for us, to be honest.
Big time evolved.
I think we've grown, spiritually and personally and in other ways. So now I think we've reached a point, thank God, where, even if we disagree, and sometimes we disagree, and I hate when we disagree because it's just hard. But it comes from, and I know I could say this for Charlie, it comes from him and me believing that that's what we think is best for the story. It's not like I'm going to get my idea in there.
We've been there, and you spend 2 hours trying to articulate it, and it feels kind of bitchy and shitty. But you're like,
I know
but ultimately,
and it's not.
And it's in service of the finished product in the end, because it's like kicking the tires. You're testing each other, and may the better idea win, or if one of us has to convince the other why it's the better idea or what have you.
And if we're both objective, then the better idea wins, which is usually how it often
happens. Usually how it happens.
And now we believe in the process more, and I think so. There's that, and I think over time, you hope that idea, and we don't care. We're guys that we're not precious with our words. We just want the best version. That's it. Whether it comes from one of us, whether it comes from someone that we're working with. Another thing that's also helped us is that we've worked with some smart people and people that are good with story and characters, like the director on Blood of Zeus. He was a great dramatist. So it was always great. Like, what do you guys think? And then we just leave it open.
And it's a process too. The idea that the more we've become big believers and kind of gone the opposite way of but we want feedback and notes, and we mean that sincerely, and we'll keep. Because what we believe is that we will take the notes and be like, okay, this is really spot on. We can implement it. This will make it better. This, okay, no, disagree.
And the note behind the note sometimes, they have an issue they can't quite articulate. You have to divine what the problem is. They're giving you a solution to a problem they haven't quite identified. You got to find what the problem is and come up with a better solution, maybe.
That's so true.
Chris Morgan, who wrote all the Fast and Furious movies and Wanted. We wrote a pilot for him at CBS. He told us something that's very true. Is that when you get the notes, just look at what issues and problems they're spotting. The fastest way to mess up your script is to use their solves, but listen to what issues they're touching upon, because you as the writer get paid to fix it, but don't use their solves, but listen to the issues that they're pointing out. I think that's very, very true.
You do yourself a disservice if you ignore notes. No, that's a big mistake. We've learned that as we've grown too. We listen to everything. Now, they may not be identifying the problem. Maybe they'll say it's something in Act 2 that bothers them, but you realize as the writer, it's something that we didn't do in Act 1. So if you correct the thing in Act 1, it's no longer a problem in Act 2. So it's our job to identify exactly, like you said, the note behind the note, what is really going on. But we listen to everything. But I'm curious, so how do you guys as brothers, when you really disagree, what do you guys do?
Doesn't
Just
happen
talk-
that often, honestly.
we have
Pretty-
very similar sensibilities anyway.
Well,
to
I was
start
even
with.
asking Chris, like, what's your favorite of all the Greek myths? Just in case we got into that.
Oh yeah.
And he said Orpheus. And I was like, me too.
Oh,
Where he
Like we
can't
hadn't even
look back
discussed this
and-
before,
go
but we
back
have the
into
same
the
favorite myth and shit. Like we
Yeah.
finish each other's sentences, you know. On this podcast, you can call it we interrupt each other a lot, but it's because we get what each other's saying. It's like, all right, I got it. Moving on, you know.
people will look at us sometimes and we'll be like, really? And we'll both say it at the same time, or we'll both think the same thing at the, you know, and it's funny, even before, you know, Charlie mentioned, I was thinking of like some of the things that right before he said it. So I don't know if like it's also brothers and spending that time together.
Yeah.
He's like a second wife.
Some Tomax and Zaymot shit.
Isn't there a third of you guys? Don't you have another
Yeah.
brother? Does he
He's-
like
he's
feel like fuck
He's the
these
best
guys?
brother. No, we always say he's the George Bailey of our hometown. He's the best brother of the three, and he's just really, you know, laudable guy. And he's in education. He was a teacher and the
sweet.
principal. Now he's a superintendent. And like when we go home,
He's doing the
always
real
doing
work that helps society. Unlike
Yeah.
He's the honestly, and he's the type of guy. He's the most unselfish person we know. He's got a heart of gold. And
cheers to the educators. My wife works
yeah,
with deaf and hard of hearing kids
Oh,
God bless, man. That's great. That's what it's all about, you know.
and pays a lot of our bills since writing doesn't pay us dick usually. We signed with a Sola. We signed with a Sola when he was a Sola and crushing it. And we're like,
Right
dude,
after
we're
the
on our
low
way.
dweller.
Yeah, the low dweller is huge for us, you know.
Yeah.
And so many stories start that way. We're on our way. And then like we went to Paradox. We had our first meeting ever at Paradox. I don't know if you know them or have worked with those shifty dudes, but Dan Rosenfeld used to be there. And our first meeting ever, we met with him and ended up eventually out of that meeting scoring an assignment. So we're like, we signed with a Solar. We got an assignment essentially out of our
Robert
first
E.
meeting.
Howard adaptation.
It was a
One of
Robert E.
his
Howard
westerns.
adaptation
That's
of a
cool.
Western, though, not fantasy shit.
Mhm.
But and then though, it's true. It's a rough road. You know what I mean? You think like you're shot out of a can. It's like those dudes. Like remember Kevin Moss on the Yankees? He comes out and he hits 24 homers by the All-Star break as a rookie, and then just sucks the rest of his career. It felt like that. Like we just came out the gate crushing, and then they started throwing us curvebals, and we
Yeah.
couldn't
You
hit
know
them
what,
or some
guys?
shit.
It's so true, and it's more the norm. So
Oh yeah.
what I used to work briefly on Wall Street, and a buddy of mine, he had this cousin, and his father was, you know, a big time writer. I mean, like huge, very successful writer, you know, Dan Gordon. And so every once in a while, you know, we'd have questions for him. I'd ask him a question. You know, we never had a mentor, unfortunately, someone to really kind of show us the ropes. I always wish we did.
Same.
But
yeah.
like he gave us like such sage advice throughout our career. But one of the things that I remember is like, you know, when we sold that spec script that Charlie mentioned to Universal, and I mentioned that, he's like, okay, great. And now he's like, you have to see if you can stay in the business in the
Right.
next 5 years. And I was like, what's this guy talking about? I'm like, we're in. Like, man, it's
That's
gonna be
really-
good here. And I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
that's what he meant. So it's
Like you say, take a Uber in Hollywood, and it's probably a screenwriter, a WGA screenwriter driving that shit.
it's
With the
People don't
podcast.
realize the average income for screenwriters is about $45,000 a year. You know what I mean? That's the median income.
Right.
It's much more blue collar. Now, listen, obviously at the top of the food chain, you know, there's tons of money to be made. But then even in TV, in the staffing business, the average is 2 out of every 3 years a writer gets staffed. So basically you're unemployed a third of the time. And these are the working writers that are routinely
Right.
kind of going from show to show.
And that 45, like in features, it's like, yeah, you didn't get a paycheck for 3 years, and then you got another feature going, you know, or you have a spec sale, which a lot of times is an option, and it doesn't go into production, and you never get that huge chunk of change.
you never see
that's
that
due
other
the first day. Yeah, exactly.
We've been
It's
in the
rough.
Writers Guild 15 years. We had 2 years where we made zero. Now we had
Right.
other years that were really good, but we had 2 goose egg years. And you know, and it's like, and when you see your savings going down and down and down, you're like, oh, you know, like we got to find something, you know.
Yeah, but
Savings.
anything like we see your family's on the line, you have a mortgage, and it's daunting. There's no doubt.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know how people get through it. We just pray. We have our mom pray. You know, and
Not for the faint of heart, for sure.
Yeah.
Pray for us so we could use it.
as long as you pray for us too. You know.
Yeah, ask him
All right,
out.
never mind. No, I'm just kidding. Shit, man. Let's talk Braveheart for a minute.
Yeah,
I
let's
watched
go
it
Braveheart.
again
Love that.
for the first time. It's the movie I've seen the most in a theater. I saw it, I think 8 times, and this is like, we were broke as shit as kids. So one time I ran out of gas on the way home because I'd used like the last of my change in the ashtray to see it for like the 8th time, and then ran out of gas. And one time I took this chick on a date and pretended I hadn't seen it 6 times already, so that could be the movie to see instead of whatever shit she wanted to see. But man, still, I hadn't watched it in maybe 10 years, but I feel like we have tuning rods or divining forks inside us. And there's something about this film that hits the perfect frequency for me out of every movie ever. Like, I cry watching it just because I love it so much. It doesn't even have to be a scene that's designed to make you cry, you know?
Yeah. So we have the same favorite TV show and same favorite film.
No shit.
You know, the show is about people's favorite movies, and Jay and I always joke that we can't pick our own. It's pretty ironic that we ask other people to, but you know, there was a short list in like Dead Poet Society, which we did a show on that with some of the cast and the writer and such. And The Fisher King was another one that's way up there. But then watching this again yesterday, and Jay and I just agreed in text earlier that no, this is it, man. This really
is the one, dude. It's the one. It's so stirring.
I can honestly say I saw this it came out my senior year of high school, and I went and I saw it in the theater. And I've never experienced, you know, outside of you know, Holy Week and Pascha, which is like, we're Greek Orthodox, you know. I've never been moved by something, or what people would call like a religious experience. Like, I walked out of that theater forever changed. My chest felt like it was going to explode. And then I just kept going back to see it again and
it's
again.
3 hours long, and I had to see it again immediately. Like, what?
But it's 3 hours long, and I was watching it again. I'm like, this is so good. And then I looked, I'm like, I paused it. We were 45 minutes into the movie, and I felt like I had just sat down and started watching. Like, that is like, there are long movies. That, to me, I know it's a long movie. It's a 3-hour movie, but it does not feel like a long movie. And it was just, you know, that movie changed me. And I was just like, you know, I was forever different after seeing it. So for me, it will be my all-time, you know, sometimes I say It's a Wonderful Life, but It's a Wonderful Life or Braveheart. But I would say I wouldn't have followed Vlas, who had an interest in this. When I saw Braveheart, that movie changed me. And kind of right there, that's where the bug kind of, you know, the flame was lit. It was just amazing.
Well, there's a couple of things about it too, guys. Just a small little tidbit. I actually just randomly emailed Randall Wallace, the writer, after I read his book. I loved his book, his last one that he wrote. And he was super cool. He wrote back, and I told him, you know, it's my brother's favorite film, one of my favorite films too. It's definitely a top 3.
Told him he has to go on the Hard Out podcast to talk about his favorite film. What's up, Randall? Come on.
I gotta know.
Come on out here. He's a really sweet guy, and you know, the fact that he even wrote back, you know, I thought that was just super cool of him. And then I was just kind of thinking, like, you know, well, what is it? What exactly is it about Braveheart, and even some of the other films that I really love? Like, and I think it's hard just to come up with one thing. I think the overall barometer, again, does it move me emotionally?
Stirs you, yeah.
Does Braveheart do that? And then I was thinking about it a little bit more, you know, in preparation for this podcast. And they say that there's no higher virtue than unselfish love. And especially unselfish love when you give your life for your brothers, for someone else. And I think that, you know, there's a component of that in Braveheart. And I think maybe that's why it resonates so much. It's just like at the end of Casablanca, you know, where he basically lets her get on that plane. Again, it's that same kind of unselfish love. It's a detriment to him.
Let me throw a wrinkle in here real quick, though. I think the beauty of Braveheart is not only that it works on that level, but also at the same time, it kind of is selfish. He's doing it for Murren. He's like, I love this woman so much, I'm going to change history to avenge her or whatever, you know what I mean? So, but by default, he's creating a movement which is servicing his brothers and everything. But I'm just saying it's layered like that. That's why the movie's so great, truly.
It's so true. Like the great ones are layered. Go ahead, bro.
No, it's funny. You could argue because, like, sometimes, like, listen, like this movie, like the storytelling is incredible. And it just like, but sometimes like we as writers, you do these things, and sometimes you look at a movie and like, what are the internal stakes? What are the external stakes? And like, you know, because like, you know, you're kind of trained to think in this way, and you have to kind of lay that out. And it's interesting because like obviously externally he ends up finding himself. And I think part of it is like, this goes back to why we were talking about Greek mythology. Why do people tell stories? They tell stories because these are ideals to live up to. And what's great about, William Wallace in this is that, like, he just comes home. He doesn't want to get involved in the troubles. He doesn't want to kind of get involved in this rebellion. He just wants to marry this girl that he's always loved, that showed him kindness after his father was killed. But then he's forced into action. And even after he kills that first kind of captain, and goes very kind of Old, Testament, and slits his throat, just like he slit his wife's throat. He tells the next clan when they show up, like, hey, we're in this. Like, you don't have to be in this. Go home.
Save yourselves. Go home. Yeah.
Just go home. You don't have to do this. And but they tell them, listen, this is on now. We don't have a choice.
Yeah. And they're suffering the same way they did. Like
they've been waiting for someone to step up.
Yeah.
Is there anything more like what just objectionable than oppression? You know what I mean? The feeling of some other group of people just
come on.
Yeah.
I mean, that really is stirring, and
it's
provoking.
Great that he reads it. I'll tell you a quick aside. In our family tree, it was kind of funny. One time we were talking with our mom. There were two people with the same last name that got married. They were both Mignotis, and we're like, "Mom, like, how did this happen?" So, no, it's not. Like, it's not hillbillies. No, but what happened was that when the Turks, while the Ottomans were ruling Greece, they had a very similar kind of prima nocta type thing, where the bey, who was like the Turkish administrator, would sleep with a girl right before she got married. And so one of our relatives, his sister was getting married, and he didn't want that to happen. So he went to where he lived and he killed him. And then he had to flee to Asia Minor. He had to leave mainland Greece and go to Asia Minor, which is modern day Turkey. And the name he took on, Mignotis, was just the alias. It wasn't his real name. So even though two people with the same name were getting married, that wasn't his real name. That
alias.
Was his, his outlaw name. You know what I mean? He was like, oh, okay, well, that's much better than thinking we're like, hillbillies and marrying second cousins.
My favorite shit in our family tree is the outlaw type shit.
That stuff's gold, but people live that. But he's this reluctant hero that gets dragged into war. And then, like, really, that's the external stakes. He started this fight. He's almost now the perfect guy in the perfect moment, who was trained by his uncle. I was going to say that, because one thing Chris and I hate is the one movies where he's like, he's the one. But in this, the seeds are planted. He's groomed for this by his father, instilling in him this rebellious spirit. Yes. Is there a better fucking line to live your life by? And I look at our screenwriting career as this as well. You don't got to beat him, just fight him. I love it.
That was amazing.
That's what his dad gave to him, right? And then Argyle comes along and teaches him to use his wits and his sword and to speak language. He is the one because he's the one. He's like the guy who is equipped to do it, not just because of fates or whatever,
And what's great, that line, Jay, it's from St. Isaac. It says, "You can kill us, but you can't hurt us." And that was what inspired that line. I was listening to a podcast that Randall Wallace was giving. Nice. So sometimes it's like death is not like this thing that like we're afraid a price we're not willing to pay, because that doesn't hurt us, because we're standing for what we believe. And it's just a beautiful, beautiful
and a life worth living,
Yeah,
exactly. Freedom. Without freedom, is it worth living?
Exactly.
It probably is worth dying to achieve it. Now, of course, in this country, we have very different opinions on what freedom constitutes, you know what I mean, as far as masks and shit are an infringement upon your freedom. So it gets crazy, but I think we could all agree, if we were to boil it down fundamentally, to what you can accept or not. Because if you look at it, William Wallace is essentially a terrorist. I was thinking about that watching this time. He's burning men alive. He's sending heads to motherfuckers, but he's using terror tactics even to intimidate. But you kind of have to when you're part of a guerrilla movement against this fucking machine, you know what I'm saying? But he's using what
fighting the empire.
Tactics he has at his disposal. Like another guy from that area of the world, Conor McGregor. It's like you beat him before you get in the ring with him, psychologically. That's some of what William Wallace was doing. But when those people, the Brits, are throwing rotten food at him at the end and shit, they're getting the headlines that he's probably a rapist and a murderer and all this and that. So it's all complex. Like, that's why I love that fixation on that innocent kid's face. There's a lot of fixating on innocence. The soldier who goes to grab the reins of his horse as he approaches to get his initial revenge. The casting of that face, the way he looks at him, the way it's shot, and then when he hits him, it's like, I regret. Sorry, it's got to be you.
It was pain.
I wish it was that guy. But sorry, kid.
You're just here for a paycheck.
So it's like everyone is innocent to a degree. We're all born as babes and children, and just that the world gets to this place where you got that nasty fucking dude licking her face and holding her down, and it's like, what happened to you as a kid, dude?
Right.
But you would be a person who would do this now, you know. And I love that fixation on that child's face for that point. That's what he looked at, and it's like you could look at the crowd; they're all children, you know.
Right.
We all are,
right.
really.
Just a few decades apart. What's that really?
Right.
Yeah.
Some body hair and shit.
Right.
It's like what separates us, really. We all have the same traumas.
He's a great filmmaker, you know, so
Dude.
the fact that he made those decisions and he put that in slow motion, you can almost see the slower frames per second in that moment.
And a great actor, man. Like just the looks on his face when he was betrayed by Robert the Bruce. I mean,
you could feel it.
He just wore it.
He just wore it. That's a great.
And yeah, all that stuff in the first, you know, the first act with, you know, Murren and all that. I mean, yeah, I mean, so there was the betrayal, the look of you know, vengeance, and then just the look of love and hope and all that before, you know, the rest came. Yeah.
He is a complex individual. Let's talk about Mel Gibson for a minute. Not to interrupt, but you know, we are on a buzzer and shit. Oh, speaking of which, I know you guys got family time and everything. It's Sunday, but feel free to stick around however long you want. Once the buzzer goes off, we do an overtime section that people can get for $1 on Patreon. Some people have stayed a couple minutes, some have stayed hours, but up to you guys how long you want to stick around and finish stories or whatever. But the Mel Gibson of it all, I have a Mel Gibson theory that makes me a Mel Gibson apologist to a lot of people, which is gross, you know, because of some of the shit he said. But I, at the same time, feel like he's such a humanist, and you can tell that from his work, that more than likely he's just a fucked up guy. We know his dad poisoned him with some bad ideology and shit when we go back to being children. And I think probably a mean drunk. So when he gets pulled over drunk as shit and he starts saying some of this stuff, is he saying what his heart truly feels, or is he trying to hurt feelings and be mean and be outrageous? You know what I mean? So I don't know. All I'm saying is it's good when we give each other the benefit of the doubt sometimes in life, instead of always just trying to torch people for their transgressions. But I try not to make it because I love his work. If he made inferior work, would I give that same benefit of the doubt? But I do feel like he's a humanist at heart. He has to be, just based on his work and what preoccupies him and shit, you know.
What he said was wrong, though. I mean, like, we can't get into his head and think of like, okay, he said like it just flat out wrong. But as you know, as a filmmaker, you know, and you look at Braveheart, it's just that this guy knows what he's doing. He knows what he's doing, you know, as terms of as a storyteller, and he knows what moments to kind of milk. He knows he understands the drama of things, and he just knows how to tell a story, because he just didn't get lucky with Braveheart. You look at Apocalypto, you look at like, you know, it's Hacksaw Ridge, you know, regardless of what.
Dude, Man Without a Face. I fucking love that movie.
Yeah.
Love
He's
it.
never made a bad film. He's never made a bad film.
Absolutely.
So no matter what you think of him personally, if you just, you know, leaving that on the side as a storyteller and filmmaker,
we do separate the art.
We have that conversation all the time, about whether you should judge the art based on the artist, and oftentimes some of the best art is made by people who are, you know, wretched and suffering and, you know, all these things, you know, flawed people, you know, often make the like, as Jay said, can access this part of their humanity in ways that other people can't sometimes.
Yeah, let's just allow that life's complex and nuanced. You know what I mean? No one's 100% a monster. He has good qualities and bad qualities. He's a flawed fucker like all of us. But I'm just saying, the condemnations of people, it's like, he is this. Roseanne, same way. Look at all the great work Roseanne did throughout her life. Feminist, put the first gay couple on TV and made their best friends in the show, made sure they were black, showed the plight of the working class like few shows have ever dared to do. But then you say some crazy shit on Twitter and everyone defines you a certain way, you know, it's all the good is erased. So again, I'm not giving anyone a free pass on the nasty shit they say. I'm just saying, let's remember everyone is human. Everyone is a mess, you know.
Well, you know, that Jay, too, this idea that, you know, listen, that's part of the reason we sent you that South Park clip. I don't know if you got
wanted to get to that, segue to that. Yes.
It's like, you know, no matter what, like Vlas said, the guy's incredible filmmaker. And the way we try and live our lives is that, you know, we try not to judge anyone. Like, what he said is absolutely wrong. And it should be condemned. But I don't know, like, we grew up in a very loving household. Our parents, you know, were very kind. We didn't grow up, you know, with someone that was like, you know, hammering away these, you know, crazy ideologies in us. So, you know, if you grow up in a kind of toxic household, like, that's going to have an effect. Like, you know, and the other thing I'll say is that we have an actor friend who shared a publicist with him who, you know, they had said that the publicist said nothing but great things about Mel, but they said that, you know, there's, you know, we don't have to be perfect. This idea that everyone can be perfect all the time, there are things we aspire to, but we make mistakes. Now, what he did and what he said were awful, but, you know, I'm not going to, you know, condemn him forever for it. You know what I mean?
I don't know
how
if
that
he's
works.
acknowledged
You know what I
that.
mean?
Has he said anything to that effect that any of us know of, that, you know, that what he said was wrong, and, you know, he realizes it, that he's spoken on it at all?
I feel like he has for sure. And I know he's talked about his drinking and the role of it. I think he blames a lot of it on that, but you know, it's hard to be super self-aware, you know.
You know, and part of it is I hate that everyone has to have an opinion and definitive stance on everything. Like,
that's what I'm talking about.
You know, and you know, like even too, like, you know, I used to work for Scott Rudin. I worked as an assistant, and I know all the things that, you know, people have said, like, you know, listen, he was a very tough boss. And the things that came out, you know, it's not okay. It's not acceptable behavior. But I can't sit here and condemn him, because, like, I learned a ton from him.
Right.
You know, I respect him. Like, did he yell at me, throw things at me? You know, yes. But, like, I can't say that it was all a horrible experience. And I feel that.
Did he actually literally throw something at you? I want to hear about this. Did you ever, like, just feel an urge to flex on him? Like, you're a football player, et cetera, right? Like, you're like, I could put this dude through this table.
This is my honest opinion. And, you know, that, like, Scott is a genius. He's easily the smartest person I've ever met. And he is going 500 miles per hour in his mind. And if you can't keep up with him, he has no patience for it. That doesn't excuse the, you know, behavior. But he would, but part of it is, and this is kind of like trying to give something context, which is not like allowed anymore, is that, like, so Scott sometimes, like, you know, he would do these like notes, like see me, and then there was see me now, and then there was no fail or die, and no fail or die was the most urgent. You know, when he put NFSD, no fail or NFOD, that meant, you know, like, come see me right now, and we got to figure this out. And sometimes he would get mad and he would throw stuff. But it was like major league, like 90 degrees away from me. Right. And to me, that was just, he's like
throwing a tantrum. He's not.
Yeah, it's like, it's not really. It didn't really, and there was one time he threw the crystal ball thing he had on his desk, and it kind of not like came near me, but like, you know, maybe like 4 feet, you know, by my side.
It was just rocking Braveheart.
You're like, hey, rag on him.
Yeah, exactly.
Watch it.
And I told Scott, I go, Scott, if you hit me with something, we're going to have a problem. And he immediately apologized, and he never threw something at me again. But when he was throwing stuff like to the side and just like throwing stuff off his desk, like, you know, I just took
sounds
that,
entertaining, to be honest.
Listen, it's a hard job, but, you know, I see all this stuff about, like, you know, pay, you know, assistants, like, you know, time's up and pay me. Like, he paid his assistants very well. We were paid very well. It was a tough boss. That behavior is not okay, but you learned a lot. And, you know, I think that, like, I hope that he gets some help, because the one thing I will say, the last thing I'll say about Scott, is that the world continues to evolve. That is just life. Yeah. What drill sergeants on Paris Island used to do 30 years ago, they cannot do now. Like, and if the Marine Corps has to change, you know, Scott has to change, because, you know, like, that's just the world we live in. But, you know, so it's like, part of it is like, you know, I can't tell you definitively, like, is this behavior okay? No, it's not okay.
I love the Ellen shit. The Ellen ones looked like she wasn't super nice to me.
She was mean.
Like, she didn't kiss my ass. I'm pissed. Ellen's supposed to kiss everyone's ass. I didn't get my ass kissed. What?
The one thing I'll say, though, for Scott, and it's interesting now that Charlie's saying it, like, I find myself just getting angry that he threw something at my brother. Like, it bothers me. It really bothers
not
me.
Adam was the point,
I just think that you know, for
even
me,
throwing stuff when you're mad, though, come on.
Yeah, it's like, who are you? Like, it's just, that's not right. You don't treat people that way. I don't give a fuck who you are. That's just my opinion on him, and it gets me angry, actually, just even hearing it. But I understand what, you know, Charlie's saying, but it still gets me angry. And for me, like,
well, what he said is he hopes he gets help, and that's what I'm saying.
Here's what I'll say, though. You know what?
Too, you know?
Well, but that's the thing. And for Mel Gibson, what he said was wrong, just completely flat out wrong. Sorry.
Absolutely.
But the one thing I will say, though, I look at myself in the mirror, and guess what? Like, I'm a big sinner. I'm the biggest sinner there is. And so I have to look at myself to try to make myself better and a better person. Right. And I only hope, if those guys are sincere, and that's a big if, but if they are sincere and they want to get better, I just hope that they're able to, and that people will give them that shot. Now, that's
the path to redemption is basically what I'm talking about.
Yeah, we all need to get better, and they need to get better too. And if they're sincere about it, they should get that shot. That's my big thing. Like, I don't want people, and I can't really equate this to them, but like, if someone messes up, I mess up, and and I hope that someone can forgive me. And I think just as a society, we have to at least be open to it. And if we see that the effort is genuine, and they really do want to try to get better, and they can, let's try to at least do that and get that from them. And
a lot of that work though happens behind closed doors. So it's kind of like, let's just be big enough to give them that and shut the fuck up and give them their space to get better too. You know what I mean? It has to become this movement of eviscerating this person and I don't want to use the term virtue signal, because everyone who does that shit, usually their heart's in the right place or whatever, but I'm not trying to get political here or anything, but I feel like a lot of that's going on. You know what I mean? It's like, do we all need to comment on it? Like you said, does everyone's opinion need to be heard on everything? Like, shut the fuck up. We all know what's acceptable and what's not.
So true. Like, I love Judge Judy. I used to watch Judge Judy with my dad,
Yes.
and we used to watch Judge Judy.
That's an exercise in human nature for sure.
All right.
But she said, like, just a little while back, like, she's a little scared of how things, and I'm paraphrasing, have become, because you can't have a dissenting voice, because if you disagree with someone, there's a fear out there now where wherever you stand, that the opposing voice, they're going to try to destroy you. And that's not a safe place to be. And that's always scary. And I'm afraid for our children. You want there to be an environment where we can have a discourse, where we can have different ideas, and where we can at least respect each other and say, okay, you might not think what I think, and vice versa, but at least let's, as you said, best idea win. You hope that the best idea can come, up to the top, but that can't happen if we're destroying each other.
Let's talk about all that sinning you've been doing.
I know, that's what I'm saying. Let's hear about that. Let's hear about some sins. It's the confession at heart.
You said you're the biggest sinner. I want to hear what you're up to.
Oh, man.
What is it, gambling? What is it?
Oh, there's just a knucklehead growing up, in the Jersey Shore. I'm not happy with some of the things that, I did. And I just hope that, I can get better and learn and grow as a person.
Yeah.
And that's what we believe. That's fundamental to who we are. Again, we're Greek Orthodox. And the first thing, if you want to have any kind of spiritual life, you have to view yourself as the greatest sinner and put yourself beneath everyone else.
That's a great way to just humble yourself at least, because everyone's entitled and thinking they're the center of the universe nowadays. It's very egocentric vibe out there, man.
Everything's gotten twisted on its head. Some of this kind of like evangelicalism, it's like, you pray for something and you hope that it manifests and like what you want will be done. Like that's the opposite of what the faith is.
Yeah, pray for others, man.
And may God's will be done, not what we want. We have to have the strength to endure, but it's like this, everything's gotten twisted and upside down. But, it's just that, I think, the fundamental thing I remember from law school is that, when they talk about like law and how it helps organize society, and that we need basic bright line rules that people can understand easily and that people can rally behind. And I think sometimes now we're like, everything is so kind of like, we're focusing on every little thing. Like,
got a lot of rules now, microaggressions and shit.
Yeah, just be decent to each other, be good, be honest. Don't try and screw other people over. And like, let's rally around that, because there are problems like, in our country, real problems. But this is still a great country. We come from a place where, our family escaped genocide. They had a civil war with the communists, where the communists were trying to kill them. Like, we've seen other walks of life. Like, there are problems here, but this is still a great country. And like, yeah, are there things that we could be doing better? Absolutely. But it doesn't mean, even like you were saying for Mel Gibson, like, okay, here is a country and it has 10 attributes. All right, there's 2 strikes that are really bad that we need to work on. And I'm not minimizing that in any way. Let's work on that. But there are 8 other really good things. But now there's this thing like, if you have this 1 strike against you, we have to throw everything out. We have to wipe everything out. You know what I mean? And listen, with someone like Harvey Weinstein, send him to jail. He should never see the light of day.
Yeah, did actual crimes. He wasn't. It's one thing to have a personality that's flawed versus committing fucking crimes against people.
Exactly. And so but part of it is like, not everything demands. It's not all or nothing, and we're going to this very all or nothing place in so many areas, and it's just, I don't think it's healthy as a society for people on a personal level, all the way down, because like it gets you all spun in the wrong way.
Yeah, I actually was going to bring that up to you I don't know how much time we have left or whatever, but your experience, kids of immigrants or right.
Yeah.
When I look at you guys, even just what I see on social media to me, and I know everyone puts their best foot forward on social media and shit, but it seems like that perfect quintessential American experience of, I mean, kids of immigrants writing fucking movies in Hollywood or whatever. Plus it looks like that Jersey, you didn't grow up with Snooki or whatever. You grew up, it strikes me like
no, we did, man. Midnight Heights was right next door to where we grew up. We were fist pumping.
Well, all right, this is what I'm saying, family wise though. Braveheart had me fist pumping, by the way. I was going to mention that to these Jersey boys. But the fact that your family itself looks so, just the tapestry is so tightly woven, you know, with you guys. I could tell that all the time, and it feels like Born on the 4th of July, those early family scenes, that Long Island upbringing he had. I always picture something like that for you guys, playing sports, going to the 4th of July parade, working at the family business, you know, and it just sounds so beautifully, quintessentially American. Awesome. And Chris and I otherwise had the other, you know, single parent welfare American experience. But it just seems like you guys come from great stock, man. Looks like you got an amazing family.
You know, family is so important to us, and it always has been. And we feel blessed to have had parents that worked as hard as they worked. They emphasized education. They weren't ignorant. They, you know, really taught us to be open-minded with everything, with people, with cultures, with you name it. And listen, as we all know, you know, you're a father. It's not what you say to a child. It's what you do. That's what resonates. And when you see your parents work as hard as our parents worked, that has an effect, you know, and that leaves its mark. And it goes back to the thing that we talked about at the very early of this podcast. It's that unselfish love. And that's what we got from our parents. So when you get that unselfish love from your parents, and you are blessed to have parents that can also be role models, you know, that we had it, that gave us a competitive advantage. It just did. And I think for me, my favorite film is The Godfather. And for me, The Godfather is very much about family. And, you know, that's why I just empathize with Michael's story, because he doesn't want to be part of that. He doesn't want to be part of the crime.
He's looking to escape his family, right?
Yes, he's trying to escape. But in the end, if someone caps his dad, someone capped my dad, if someone did that to my brother, oh man, then that's where, like, okay, I live by, you know, family values and a moral core. But if you do that, my family, that's the one time where I feel like, okay, I could go to the dark side. And that's what I find is so incredibly compelling about that movie. You know, in addition to the writing, the directing, the cinematography, all the other stuff, the score.
Top shelf.
But family just, you know, really matters.
Quick question. What's your other brother's name?
Triandophilos, Trion, Tree, or Tommy. We all had Greek names.
So
and
out
then
of
we also
Charlie,
had, like, the American.
out of Charlie and him.
My name's Kyriakos. My real name's Kyriakos, but
That's
it's
amazing.
too hard, so I just go by.
Dude, I would rock that.
My middle name is Wally. Wally. It's Vlas.
Do they watch a lot of the Beeve or what? What is it?
Well, yeah, I mean, like, I'm just looking at my parents. I'm like, I'm 8 pounds. This is a Vlas Wally Parlapanides.
Well, I was going to ask Vlas, if you're Michael, which one of your brothers is Fredo?
I'm not Michael. I'm not Michael. I'm like the hot.
Who are you? Are you Sonny? You're Sonny. So all right.
No. Our other brother is Sonny. The one that, you know, what's crazy? Our brother
Fredo.
There's no Fredo, but Charlie's the smartest, so he's Michael because he's the smartest.
No.
Then our other brother, he had the temper, so he's more Sonny. And then, you know,
that makes you Michael. No, that makes you Fredo.
Makes me Fredo. You know, but we don't have a Fredo. We don't have a Fredo. You know, I'm a mix.
The truth is,
I'm a mix of the two. That's what it really is.
Well, hey, again, we're complex human beings, right?
I have.
Jay, the truth is,
Sonny and Michael, and Charlie is Michael in that that he's smart and he's tactician.
We live the American dream. You're Tom Hagen, is what you are, bro, in our family.
Nice. Tom Hagen's a fucking man.
Love Duvall's so great.
Dude, he's the best in everything. Everything.
We were very lucky, Jay, and it's something that, you know, we did live the American dream. Our parents, you know, were immigrants and we were poor, and, you know, there were times, you know, but they always hustled, and we always knew they loved us. And Vlas used to always say this, like, our parents never fought, and when they did, it was always about one thing. It was money, and it was the lack of money. And, you know, I tell my wife sometimes, though, even though we were poor, we had the best childhood. Like, there was a summer, our dad, you know, he had a diner. Every Greek family, you know, they come to America, they open up a diner, at least on the East Coast. And then he eventually opened a hot dog stand on the boardwalk in Seaside. And one summer, And one summer, all this sewage and hypodermic needles from New York that they were dumping in the ocean washed up on the beach. So the beach was closed the whole summer. And so no one was buying hot dogs. And we also had a parking lot where people would park their cars. You know, our brother Tree and I used to work there. And so that summer we made no money. And I'll never forget, from that summer until St. Patrick's Day, when the boardwalk opened again, we ate our dad's excess hot dogs that he didn't sell that summer. So we had hot dogs for it was breakfast.
They groomed you to be a screenwriter.
Yeah. And it was hot dogs with ketchup or hot dogs with mustard. That year they're like, listen, like